they got any kind of personality and some intellect, they can sell. I think the
Yeah,
trick is we have to figure out whether or not they're going to pound the phone for 6 months, 12 months,
right.
18 months in a row.
Hey there, and welcome to a brand new episode of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hausman. Joining me today is a brand new rock star. Super excited to dive in today. He's the founder of a leading recruitment, training, and outsourcing agency, Kevin Downey. Thanks so much for joining me, bud.
Thanks for having me, Kurt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny. We could go a lot of ways, but I want to dive right in today and talk about B2B. So, what are some of the best ways to drive leads for B2B companies, and like what gets the highest ROI in your experience?
Sure. Good question. So, intermittent things that I really like are trade shows. I think trade shows, if targeted correctly, are awesome, but they're intermittent. Same thing with webinars. Webinars, when done correctly, if you can drive targeted people, are phenomenal ROI. But they're intermittent. You can only do them so often. You can't do webinars every day, right? So for everyday lead generation, I mean, it's old school business development by reps, either boots on the ground or, obviously phone and high powered email. Those are the two things that work day to day.
All right. Yeah, and it's kind of music to my ears because I find that when we're in uncertain times, sometimes just going back to basics and doing those things that we know work, I think it's good to know that they still work. So that's really good. And obviously, you do that recruitment of sales and business development reps. So how do you find those reps that are built to do cold outreach? Because let's face it, a lot of people are not.
Sure. No, good question. So we're always looking for experience. We don't really worry about resume in the sense of numbers and quotas. I mean, maybe for sales for specific industries and they're looking for far more experienced senior salespeople. Yes. But otherwise, what we really look for is energy and some experience doing cold outreach and comfort with that. Right.
Mm,
So if as long as you can find that, and there's ways to test for that in the interview process, you can find people that are really built for it, right? So you're really looking at personality, and certainly, it helps if you're using a psychometric assessment. They can look at that too, but all things being equal, you can do it with interview. Absolutely.
yeah, because it's interesting. I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about that because one of the things it's like I feel like sometimes people are really good at interviewing, but I don't know if they're good at sales and good at dealing with rejection until they get into the job. How do you dive into that?
Well, I think the question there is, are we talking about sales or are we talking about business development, right? So if we talk about
Mm,
sales, specifically for us, the way we talk about it, and I teach my people, is sales is what you're doing. It's an activity you're doing when you have a prospect that is a decision maker that has a pain point, right? So you have someone that can write a check or authorize a check, right? And they've got enough pain point to talk to you. That's a sales mode, right? Up until that point, we're doing business development. That's a marketing function done by salespeople typically, or business development reps, of course, sales development reps, whatever you call them. What we're always looking for is our clients, when they come to us in B2B, almost always, they need salespeople that are going to be doing their own prospecting. Rarely do they come to us. And yes, we get some B2C and some B2B here and there where the reps are dealing with just appointments, might be on-site appointments, in-home appointments, whatever. But typically they are looking for B2B sales reps to do their own prospecting. I don't worry about sales talent per se. Like you can kind of get a feel for that. Like, if they're trained on the product or services properly, if they got any kind of personality and some intellect, they can sell. I think the
yeah,
trick is we have to figure out whether or not they're going to pound the phone for 6 months, 12 months,
right.
18 months in a row. That's the tricky part that all the companies are dealing with, right?
Yeah, no, I love that distinction. That's really, really good stuff. So you mentioned email, good old fashioned email in the first answer. So why do you think it feels like almost all B2B companies struggle with using emails to drive leads?
Yeah, they do. I mean, I have fortunate that I built a nice book of business and sold that, but doing email for clients, sent about 110 million emails over 8 years for clients. I would say the two things a company struggle with is infrastructure and strategy. So infrastructure, almost all of them use their CRM. I mean, some do constant contact in MailChimp and do their newsletter stuff. That's fine. It's not going to drive leads, but it's great to keep your brand in front of people, right? But if we're talking about when they use their CRM, they're trying to drive scheduled calls, they're trying to drive leads. The first problem is they don't have the infrastructure to send the volume. You have to have the infrastructure to send the volume. CRM, you're not
Hmm.
going to be able to do that, right? That's problem number one. It takes 500 to 1,500 outbound emails to generate a lead, typically, right? That's the general rule that I would use, depending on infrastructure and deliverability and other things. Maybe in a really good scenario, 200, 250 emails. That's a really good situation, right? Um, so I would say infrastructure is problem, and then strategy. So you hear a lot about sequences, and they thread emails together, and they market and tell their story, and then they try to drive them to a call. That's not the right way to drive leads. We use block style copy structure, and we only send one email at a time to a prospect, and we ask them very simply, do you have this pain point? If you do, we can help you solve it. This is what I want you to do next. I want you to reply. I'm going to send you this, right? And then if you're interested, we can schedule a call. But in the business development and sales process, we want that email to drive the reply. And then we want the sales or business development rep to respond to that reply and call them at the same time.
Hmm.
All right. Because we're looking
Yeah.
for people to identify themselves as a decision maker with a pain point. Marketing just for marketing's sake doesn't do any good.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's really interesting. Okay, cool. You got my wheels turning here, Kevin. I appreciate that. So,
Yeah, sure.
all right. So, final question for you: how do you balance automation? So, in other words, that high volume you're talking about with personalization in B2B email marketing. How do you do
Really
that?
good question. So people overthink it, marketing people in particular and companies overthink this, and they try to do too much personalization, and it comes off as very impersonal. You can read right through it. I mean, how many of any of us out there have received an email that receive emails all the time where you can tell they're trying too hard to pull from a blog post or a copy on our website and implant that into their email to make it sound personalized? Would a sales rep do that when they're doing cold outreach? No. If I'm a sales rep and I call Johnny, I say, Johnny, hey, my name's Kevin. We do this. Curious if you got this problem. If you do, I got this. I want to send it over to you. Have you look at it. All right.
Yeah, it's simplify.
That's all an email is. So what do we personalize with? We personalize mostly first name, sometimes last name, occasionally company and subject lines to change it up, but not in the emails typically because even company gets screwed up sometimes because legal entity versus DBA don't match up. So like if anybody emails me and they hit me with Four Eyes Services in the email, I know unless they're the government or they're dealing with credit card processing or accounting, I know that like they're way off base, right? Because I don't go by that entity. Like that's our legal entity. So
Yeah,
so
that's
yeah,
interesting.
email just is it's not hard, but it is because our best people in the country in marketing are all in B2C companies because the value is so much higher. You know what I mean? Like I just think about all the infrastructure, the structures I've looked at over the years, and I've only seen two or three, four good ones in 8 years by companies, and I know two of those were built by the owners. So
What's interesting to me, Kevin, and again, like I do think that so many times in almost every area, and it's what you've alluded to here in my mind, is that it's a volume game. Like I'm reminded of Alex Hermosi, who big guru in sales and marketing and all that stuff. And he talks about how when he first did he opened a gym, and his mentor told him to do flyers, and so he printed 300 flyers or whatever and put them around. He didn't get any response, and his mentor's like, "Well, how many did you do?" He said 300. He said 300. I test with 5,000. And and I think that many of us are saying, email's not working the way whatever we think it should work, but we're sending 100 emails, and you're talking about sending thousands. And I think that, to me, that understanding that difference, that's been like an unlock for me in our conversation.
yeah, like mail, like if where there's two different main infrastructures that I teach clients on, for example. So let's say we look at server structure like MailReef. MailReef per server, you're sending 2,500 a day, cold on 20 days. That's 50,000 a month. If we look at email API, combine that with Apollo, and you're sending 6,000 a day, for example. And again, they're slightly different things, so the value for the one volume to the other are about the same. But if you send the 6,000 a day, like that's literally the starting point for me. 2,500, 6,000 a day is a starting point. If you're trying to use your CRM and you're plugging in your sales reps' email addresses, number one, if you're doing it on your main domain, that's you need to stop doing that because you're trashing your domain. But even beyond that, now what can you send per day? Like, okay, you shouldn't send more than 25, maybe 30, but some will try and send 100, right? So you can get 100 out before, let's say, Google Workspace is going to suspend you. 125, something like that. Even at 100, if you have 10 sales reps, that's still only 1,000 a day. That's not, if you generate one lead off of that, I would consider it a moderate success,
That's
right?
super
Like,
interesting.
again, it's easiest thing to generate leads for I've ever done in a true B2B client atmosphere. We had something internal we did that was a little bit better, but it was a little bit like cheating. So, but where a client, promotional products or corporate gift, offering to send catalog, still takes 250 to 300 emails to generate a lead in a good circumstance, right? And all you're doing is you want to see if they're interested in looking at a catalog. Hey, we got this new stuff, got this new bag, got this new thing. I want to send it over to you with our catalog, our pricing, and pictures so you can get a look at it. Well, anybody that's involved in buying for a company is going to be interested in that because they want to shop. They love that experience, right? Like it's something to do. It's tied to work. Doing it for work gets them away from the daily doldrums, right? Whatever. It's psychologically one of the easiest leads to generate, and it still takes hundreds to generate a lead. So that's what I always point to for companies when you get a consulting firm that does cost auditing, for example, and they think they should send 500 emails and get a lead. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, do you realize how hard that lead is to generate? You're asking people that they don't know you to open up their books to you on the front end. That's 1,500, 2,000, 2,500 emails to generate a lead. It's just, yeah, it is a volume play ultimately. You're correct.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, this has been super interesting. Kevin, where can people find more information about you if they want to dive into this?
Sure. KevinMDowney.com. And we do, sales rep recruiting and placement, obviously business, prospect lists are all part of what we do, training reps. And then of course we do have an outsourced inside sales team. So if somebody wants to outsource reps, they want them fully managed by somebody else like me, we have that option. So we offer that as well.
Cool. Kevin, this has been fun. We'll have to do it again sometime, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem. That's going to wrap up this edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.